In this episode, a young intern is cleaning a lion's enclosure when tragedy strikes unbeknown to the staff. A large play ball rolls into a gateway, blocking the security gate from locking shut. A large male lion noses the gate with his snout. The gate swings open. Nothing now stands between him and the young intern. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying lion attack on Alexandra Black. Alexandra Black had graduated from Indiana University Bloomington and was pursuing a career in zoology. She had studied the integrative study of animal behavior and was determined to land a job working with animals. She had already worked as an intern at 3 different wildlife sanctuaries and reserves in the U.S. This was a step towards making a full-time living doing something that she loved. In December 2018, she began her 4th internship, this time at the Conservators Center in Burlington, North Carolina. Her previous internships included working at an Indiana Wolf Research Center and Wildcat Creek Wildlife Center. The center, founded in 1999, is home to around 20 big cats, including lions, tigers, and leopards. They drew in thousands of visitors to the center each year. Alexandra was being shown the ropes in the first few days of the job. She work-shadowed the staff there, learning the routine and understanding the needs of the various different animals they cared for. In most zoos and wildlife sanctuaries, only fully trained staff have access to the animal enclosures. Some have a complicated locking mechanism to ensure the safety of staff, such as keys that can't be removed from a lock unless it is locked properly, or hydraulic action gates. Some zoos require a minimum of 6 months of work experience at the vicinity until staff are deemed competent enough to hold the keys for a specific enclosure. The Conservators Center also had stringent measures in place to ensure the safety of the staff, general public, and the animals themselves. But on Alexandra's 10th day working at the center, something went badly wrong. The measures they had in place failed, causing catastrophic results. Many of the 15 lions they kept at the facility were rescued from appalling conditions. They had been kept in tiny cages, treated badly, and malnourished. Matthai was one of the lions who had been rescued from these conditions from Ohio in 2004. Haunted by his past, he was nervous by nature but enthusiastically received attention from the keepers he had grown to trust. On December 30th, 2018, Alexandra's 10th day at the facility, she joined the husbandry team to carry out routine cleaning in the lion enclosure. She was under the supervision of a professionally trained animal keeper. Each section of the enclosure was secured from the next. Trained personnel opened and closed the gates between the sections. But on this particular occasion, a large play ball rolled into the gateway. As the gate swung to a close, it was blocked from fastening shut by the ball, a freak accident, a 1 in a million accident that was to prove fatal. Matthai nudged the gate with his snout. It swung open. He walked through, his huge paws stepping onto the cold, hard concrete. He was now just feet away from the staff who were sweeping up the intersection. Unbeknown to Alexandra and the other staff, there was now nothing between the huge male lion and them, no wire or fencing, no gates or lock blocks. Matthai sniffed the ground. He lifted his head and proceeded forwards, silently stepping forwards. His usually timid nature was overpowered by his natural instinct. He saw the young intern just feet from where he was standing, and he lunged at her. He grabbed her by the ankle and pulled her to the floor. Alexandra kicked and thrashed around, trying to release her foot from the lion's grip. But the 500-pound lion pulled her into his outer enclosure. Animal trainer Ashley Watts, who was working with Alexandra at the time, jumped into action. She desperately tried to separate the lion from the young intern, trying to distract him and lure him away. But Matthai was fixated on Alexandra. He then leapt on top of Alexandra and instinctively went for her neck. He closed his crushing jaws around her windpipe and dragged her around his enclosure, scraping her over the concrete. Alexandra was still alive at this point. Her colleagues screamed and shouted at the lion and immediately called for backup. Ashley Watts ran for a hosepipe and sprayed it at the lion, but to no avail. Matthai was not budging. Soaking his face, aiming at his eyes and his snout, he didn't flinch. By now, Alexandra was bleeding profusely from the neck. The lion's 7 centimeters, canines had cut deeply into her flesh, severing her arteries and fracturing her spinal cord. But Alexandra had fought back. Despite the incredible power of the 14-year-old lion's bite and being dragged around the enclosure by her neck, the young intern put up an impressive fight. She had punched and pulled, scrabbled and hit the lion with her arms. As she began to lose consciousness, the autopsy report shows remarkable defensive wounds on Alexandra's arms from fighting back. She fought until the end. Matthai readjusted his grip, puncturing Alexandra's skull, and his claws dug into her shoulder, chest, and back. The young woman who had dreamed of working with these animals for so long now lay limp in the captive lion's enclosure. Through no fault of her own, she had lost her life that day. There was nothing anybody could do to try and get to Alexandra before it was too late. The attack had been rapid, brutal, and the severe injuries Alexandra had sustained were inflicted in a matter of seconds. The Caswell County Sheriff's Office responded to the distress call. Its deputies arrived just before midday. Upon arrival, they noticed a lion running around inside an enclosure with several people running around the outside of it. One of the police officers grabbed his 12-gauge shotgun from the trunk of his patrol car and ran over to the commotion. The center was ill-prepared for an eventuality like this. There were no tranquilizers near the lion's enclosure, and the staff were desperately trying to usher the lion back into his indoor pen. But it wasn't working. To the officers that arrived on the scene, it looked like chaos. The lion was not listening to his handlers, and he continued to pace around his enclosure, preventing anyone from getting close to Alexandra. Even when the tranquilizer darts finally arrived on the scene, one gun jammed, and they had to run about trying to find another. They led the lion closer to the fence with raw meat, and then the center CEO Doug Evans fired the tranquilizer darts into the lion. The lion flinched, but the medicine didn't take effect. Staff tried again, firing a second dart into the lion's muscle. Again, he didn't respond to the anesthetic. They tried once more. When 3 tranquilizers didn't bring the lion down, the sheriff's department gave the order to shoot and kill the lion. They needed to get to Alexandra. They needed to try and rescue her. Maybe there was still a chance they could resuscitate her. After 7 shots from the shotgun, the lion fell to the ground. But an 8th was shot into the animal's heart to make sure he was dead. Matthai finally succumbed, breathing his last breath. It is hard to imagine that captive animals can deliver such devastating damage, having never set foot in the wild. But the fact of the matter is that these animals are still technically wild. They still have thousands of years of natural instinct within their DNA. That hunting instinct is still strong. Even those born and bred in captivity can turn on their keepers without warning. Having spent years within a familiar environment, the Conservators Center in Burlington had been inspected just months before Alexandra's fatal attack in April 2018. The U.S. Department of Agriculture found nothing of concern or out of compliance. There had been no workplace safety complaints made by employees at the center. An earlier inspection in 2017 also found the facility to comply with all safety regulations and procedures. It seems that this was an accident, a tragic and freak accident with no one to blame. Known by her friends as Alex, following her death, it was obvious how much of an impact she had on people's lives. Her passion for animals and conservation were clear through her work, and her colleagues were always impressed by Alex's hardworking ethos. She had an unrivaled enthusiasm for the job and a permanent smile across her face that lit up any room she walked into. The death of anyone so young is tragic, but losing a passionate conservationist like Alex was a loss for the entire zoological and conservation community. The amazing person that she was will always shine brighter than the terrifying lion attack. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe for the next episode.